Laura Louise had asked me to say a couple words about Raconteurs and what it means to me and what storytelling has meant to me in my life, which I could write a whole thesis on, which you would all find very stimulating, I'm sure. I'll just keep it to a few words. The story that I'm going to tell tonight, which Laura Louise asked me to tell, was the first story I ever told on stage. It was the first time I had ever performed anything except, actually, is our friend from Wahanoan reality show here? Yes. I did not go to Wahanoan. We didn't have TVs. I went to Camp Shalom, where we made forts out of Israeli threads and things. But I was in the theater there, and I played Jack in Jack Meets it was not Jack and the Beanstalk, so it was Jack and the non-kosher Beanstalk. I was the star. I hadn't performed anything since then until Moth Up Toronto, and the theme was love and sex. And my friend Mojan, actually, whose party I was just at, she said, you should come and do this thing. And I walked in, and it was a room that was not as diverse as it is now. We've grown up a little bit. It was at the Colonel, at No Nurse to the Colonel, and there was all of these cool hipsters with beards and flannel. We still have a bit of that, so that's nice, keeping it traditional. And I was like, what are all these dummies, myself included, doing here to listen to stories? Nobody was on their phones, everybody was listening super attentively, and I was thrown into a community that I did not know even existed or that even wanted to exist. And I told this story, I had a great time. And I've been telling stories ever since, at Moth Up Toronto, at Raconteurs, at all kinds of other shows. Laura Louise and Alicia, who she mentioned, were such beautiful forces in my life, and because of them I got to apply for a grant, and I got it, and because we live in Ontario, they give people like me stories to talk about themselves into a microphone, so I got that grant, and I got to write this one-woman show that I performed, and so all of these creative things in me that I didn't know existed happened because of them. This is not a talk, now I tell you a story. I need a minute. Sorry, not a whole minute, just like a second. All right. All this to say, this storytelling community has really meant more to me than I can express. And now I will dazzle you with the first story I ever told on stage. Yeah, sorry if you've heard it. Like Chris said, sing along. It began 10 years ago. I actually didn't begin. It began and ended in one day, 10 years ago. I'm good at the traditional thing. I had just been living in Costa Rica for 1 year doing my master's at the University for Peace. I was living near the jungle. I was studying with about 90 people from all over the world. We were really changing the world, as you could tell, because things are going so great. So it was very successful academically and politically. And I came home from my year in Costa Rica. I had already had one extension on my master's thesis, which I needed to finish. So I thought naturally it would be really smart for me to go to another forested area to isolate myself to write this thing. To be clear, in the forest, I was isolated. I didn't write it. I had a lot of fun, and I had no sex for a whole year because we were just so stimulated in other ways. But they weren't in our bodies at all. So it was a dry time in a very wet jungle. I regret saying that. So, accidentally celibate, I came home to Toronto and I decided I would go to upstate New York to the forest to finish writing my master's thesis. So I board the train with all of my books and my things from Toronto to Albany. And I was going to be living in a small town called New Lebanon, New York. And I'm on the train, and it's a 12-hour train ride. And quite near the beginning, the train stops. And outside, I was sitting by the window, and there's an empty seat by me. And outside of the window, there was like these glistening men that were topless, and they had like, I don't know about tools. They were like, doing things. I don't know what people like how things get built or what. But I know that I was not paying attention to their craftsmanship or their skill. It was like an old, like those old Pepsi commercials, you know, where guys were just, and then they'd like crack it open and make the sound. Like all of this was happening in my head, and all of my like heterosexual selves were ignited again. And I was like, oh, maybe that will help myself and my writing about Israel and Palestine. But of course I couldn't reach them because they were outside of the train. But I watched them for a while. And then for the first time, but not the last, I made a prayer to God. I talked to God, as I have been since I was little. Look how quiet it gets. It's my favorite part. So I was talking to God and I was like, listen, you really need to hook me up. Like, you need to help me out soon. I know you have other things to deal with. This was always my issue with prayer, even as a kid. I remember being in synagogue, being like, now everybody prays. And that's when I would talk to God, except I'd be like, I'm sorry, I know you're really busy. You have this country and I don't think they eat there, and then you have this problem here and that problem there, and my parents are getting divorced and you should help them. But, like, I was always trying to, like, apologize. This time I didn't. I was like, I understand you're busy, but you need to help my pants come off. And then somebody come in. So I made that very sincere, very clear request, some might say demand, of the Almighty. And the train keeps moving on. And I'm trying to write this fucking master's thesis that was such garbage. I had 2 extensions. My own parents didn't read it. I didn't even read it. I don't even think my advisor read it. But I was really focused while I was writing it because it was really important, because I was writing about Israel and Palestine and the potential of peacemaking that I had an idea for. So it was really important work that I had to stay on point. So I'm working, and then, I don't know, a few hours in, you know, there's all these fucking stops on a 12-hour train ride. This guy walks in, and there's this light here on me, like the light of God. The light shone on this blonde creature of divine magic. He was like a fucking woodsy unicorn. And he was super tall and fair-skinned, which is not normally my desires. And he had a leather bag, like a satchel, like a worn-in satchel, like a man who's been places. You know? I was like, he's smart because of his accessories. And he was just so tall and so dreamy. And so I remember I was sitting in the window seat. There was an empty seat next to me, and then the aisle, empty seat. And then Dreamboat LaRue over to my right. So naturally, I stopped writing my thesis and I started just documenting everything he was doing. Does anybody else do that? Laughter doesn't mean yes, but a clap does. Thank you. Sometimes I document what strangers do, like for sport. And I write things about them and I make little characters about them. This guy was just cataloging. And I was almost kind of writing him a love letter. Like it was a special piece of writing because he was so revered in my mind. He didn't know. He was just like doing his thing, I don't know, reading the paper or something. And so I'm like cataloging and documenting, and I'm looking at his bag, which by the way, out of it came a baguette that was sticking out of his bag, which I also thought was beautiful and had significance. And then, midway through my documentation, he opens the satchel and he pulls out a jar of Nutella. He breaks off the baguette and he just starts dunking it and eating it like the perfect human man. I was just like gone. I was beside myself. And then because it was such a long train ride, I had to get up and walk around and move or else I'd die or something. And so I asked him if he would watch my things, my computer and all that stuff. Of course he's super trustworthy because he has a worn-in leather bag, you see. So he says yes. I go for my walk to like the dining car where they don't have baguettes and Nutella. They have like sad ham, which I didn't buy. I wasn't gonna eat sad sandwich in front of that guy, so I didn't eat. My grandma told me not to eat in front of men if you're a lady. I don't do that. But in this case, I did. I walked back, and he's like, so what are you reading there? So you have lots of books. And I was like, he talks. And I tried to sound really smart. I was like, I'm doing this really prestigious program that's may or may not change the course of Middle East politics. But it's going pretty well, and there's like a lot of interest in it from nobody. But I'm trying to talk about this, and thankfully he doesn't really know about Israel and Palestine, so I'm just like blah, blah, blahing about all kinds of things. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu comes into the conversation, and he was so impressed, and we start getting into a conversation, and he comes and sits next to me, next to my body. His body is there. And I was not wrong, he is a Renaissance man. He trades stocks and does wilderness adventures with children and hunts and fishes for fish that he eats and cooks out of his cabin in Michigan. And he does all of these things, and I was spellbound. And then he says, oh, by the way, what's your name? I'm like, oh, I'm Arianne. And he's like, oh, I'm Jeff. And then I don't know how to do that with myself. That seems about right. We shake hands, and it's fucking charged. It was like electricity. So obviously I have to take my hand away because I was gonna, it wasn't appropriate with the feelings I was having. But I could tell he was feeling them too, so I just take my hand away, and I was like, what? All right. We keep talking, we're talking more. There's a little bit more touching. We're making out, we're napping. It's like magic. I'm in a relationship. On the train car. And it's good. Who naps with a stranger on a train? I do. When he's that man. And his name was Jeff. His last name was Mans. Which I felt was appropriate because he was so many men. And he had such big hands, you know? They were so much bigger than my hands. And so we're napping and kissing and just he's like, I really want you to come visit me in my cabin in Michigan. I was like, absolutely, I love to travel and by rail. And, we're nearing Albany. So we've been talking for hours and kissing for hours. And I was like, oh, this is he's a magical man. And this is such a gift. And we're coming to Albany. So he takes me with my bags, and we're standing in the middle of two train cars. And we're just fused in a sexual manner. But no, we weren't having sex. But there was lots of inappropriate things that were taking place. But I felt, even as a very conservative, judgy woman who was passing me and we met eyes as he was giving me a hickey, she was judging me, and I was just when you pray for something and then you get it, you're not going to be no, it's inappropriate. I know how to interact, to pay my respects, I get off the train, then the train stops for a longer time, so we have a longer time to sort of loiter in this year of post-celibacy redemption. And then I have to go. And so I get off the train, and these two women are standing there, and they're just damn, girl, you had a good train ride. And I did. I was hickey, I was a mess. I was I really did. It was an Amtrak. Excellent commute. And they were just it must be so hard to leave your boyfriend. I was it is.